I carried yesterday into the dawn, like a suitcase filled with silent storms, trying to smile while the weight held on, wearing courage that was tired and worn. The world kept moving without a pause, while questions echoed inside my mind. Then through the stillness, softer than breath, I felt your mercy begin to find me. Not in thunder, not in fire, not in answers I could explain, but in a quiet, holy whisper, calling me gently by my name. I found the place where my heart finally rested, safe in the shadow of your endless grace. No longer running, no longer pretending, held by the kindness shining from your face. When all my strength had almost left me, when every road seemed lost in the night, you became the peace I couldn't discover, the calm that carried me back to the light. There were seasons I mistook for endings, doors that closed and dreams that disappeared. Yet every broken piece I surrendered became a testimony you were here. You walked beside me through hidden valleys, through every fear I never spoke aloud. And while I thought I was slowly falling, you were teaching my soul to trust somehow. Not with power, not with glory, not with treasures of this world, but with love that kept pursuing every corner of my hurt. I found the place where my heart finally rested, safe in the shadow of your endless grace. No longer running, no longer pretending, held by the kindness shining from your face. When all my strength had almost left me, when every road seemed lost in the night, you became the peace I couldn't discover, the calm that carried me back to the light. If tomorrow brings another mountain, if another storm appears ahead, I'll remember how your hands have held me every time my hope was hanging by a thread. Because your faithfulness is not a moment, it's a river that never runs dry, flowing through the deserts of my weakness, teaching weary wings to fly. quiet, but my heart was restless, filled with worries I could not outrun. I watched the shadows dance across the ceiling, wondering where my peace had gone. The road behind me carried many memories, some of joy and some of deep regret, and every mile seemed to whisper questions that I still hadn't answered yet. And through the silence came a gentle kindness, like morning sunlight after endless rain. A voice so full of mercy and compassion softly called my name. I thought I was alone, then Jesus called my name, and suddenly the darkness wasn't quite the same. Every fear that held my heart so tightly started slowly slipping away. I thought I was alone, then Jesus called my name, reminding me His love had never changed. And in the safety of His presence, I found the strength to hope again. He didn't speak with thunder from the heavens, or write His answer brightly in the sky. He simply met me in my fragile weakness and stayed with me through the night. The burdens that seemed far too heavy for me began to feel much lighter in His hands, because the God who holds the stars in motion already had a perfect plan. He knew the tears I'd never shown another, the hidden battles nobody could see. Yet still He drew a little closer and whispered peace to me. I thought I was alone, then Jesus called my name, and suddenly the darkness wasn't quite the same. Every fear that held my heart so tightly started slowly slipping away. I thought I was alone, then Jesus called my name, reminding me His love had never changed. And in the safety of His presence, I found the strength to hope again. One day every lonely road will end in glory, sleepless night will fade from view, and all the moments I felt abandoned will reveal how close you always were. Until then, I'll trust the hand that guides me, even when I cannot clearly see. For the Savior who found me in the darkness will walk through every dawn with me. I thought I was alone, then Jesus called my name, and my weary heart has never been the same. For the voice that spoke such healing over me still echoes through my days. I thought I was alone, then Jesus called my name, and now I know wherever I may go, the shepherd who found me in the midnight will never let me walk alone. Jesus called my name, and I found peace. Jesus called my name, and my fears were released. The sun slipped quietly beyond the horizon, and evening wrapped the world in gentle blue. Another day of carrying heavy burdens, another day of trying to make it through. My mind was crowded with tomorrow's questions. My heart was tired from fighting every fear. But in the stillness of that sacred moment, I felt your calming presence drawing near. You didn't ask me to have all the answers. You didn't ask me to understand the road. You simply opened wide your arms of mercy and invited me to let go. I left my worries at the feet of Jesus. Every burden, every fear, every care. And somehow what once felt so overwhelming became lighter in the shelter of His grace. I left my worries at the feet of Jesus and traded all my striving for His peace. For the one who holds tomorrow in His hands was holding every part of me. The Stars appeared like promises above me, tiny reminders that you're always near. And everyone seemed to softly whisper, you never walk alone down here. The problems waiting for me in the morning had not completely disappeared from sight, but they no longer felt so frightening when placed within your endless light. Because the God who guides the oceans and calls the galaxies by name is still the loving shepherd who carries me when I'm afraid. I left my worries at the feet of Jesus. Every burden, every fear, every care. And somehow what once felt so overwhelming became lighter in the shelter of His grace. I left my worries at the feet of Jesus and traded all my striving for His peace, for the one who holds tomorrow in His hands, was holding every part of me. One day all my questions will be answered. One day faith will finally become sight. But until then, I'll rest within the promise that your love is guiding every step of life. When I cannot see beyond the shadows, when I don't know what tomorrow brings, I'll trust the heart that gave its life to save me, and the King above all kings. I left my worries at the feet of Jesus and found a peace this world could never give. Quiet confidence within my spirit that teaches weary hearts to live. I left my worries at the feet of Jesus, and there I'll leave them day by day. was still, the world was sleeping, but my mind refused to close its eyes. I stared into the dark with heavy questions, searching for hope beneath the night. The silence felt much louder than the daytime. Every worry echoed through my soul. I tried to carry all tomorrow's burdens until the weight became too much to hold. And like a breeze through an open window, gentle as the falling rain, a voice of mercy found my weakness and softly called my name. In the middle of the night, Jesus whispered my name, and suddenly the darkness didn't feel the same. Every fear that held me captive started slowly drifting away. In the middle of the night, Jesus whispered my name, reminding me His love had never changed. And wrapped inside His faithful promise, I found the strength to rest again. No flashing signs, no mighty thunder, just peace arriving deep within, the kind that only heaven can deliver, the kind no earthly voice can give. And though the answers didn't come immediately, something greater settled in my heart, because His presence was enough assurance that He'd be with me through every part. The God who paints the stars above me, the God who calms the raging sea, was sitting in the quiet beside me, watching over me faithfully. In the middle of the night, Jesus whispered my name, and suddenly the darkness didn't feel the same. Every fear that held me captive started slowly drifting away. In the middle of the night, Jesus whispered my name, reminding me His love had never changed. And wrapped inside His faithful promise, I found the strength to rest again. One day there'll be no sleepless evenings, no anxious thoughts to overcome, only endless peace within His presence, forever safe inside His love. Until that day, I'll keep remembering the countless times He made a way, and how His voice became my comfort when hope seemed far away. In the middle of the night, Jesus whispered my name, and every shadow lost its power to remain. For the Savior who walks beside me is the same forevermore. In the middle of the night, Jesus whispered my name, and my weary heart was never quite the same, because the God who holds creation still watches over me with love. Jesus whispered my name, and peace came near. Jesus whispered my name and stayed right here. I reached a point where nothing made much sense, where even breathing felt like work to do. The weight of everything I couldn't fix myself was heavier than anything I knew. I smiled outside but shattered in my silence, trying to hide the cracks no one could see. And in the middle of my deepest breaking, you were quietly holding me. You didn't wait until I got it right. You didn't wait for me to be enough. You came into the mess I tried to hide and called it love. When I was falling apart, you held me together. Piece by piece, you never let me go. Even when I couldn't see tomorrow, your mercy was the only thing I know. When I was falling apart, you held me together. You turned my brokenness into peace. And in the middle of my deepest struggle, you never once released me. There were nights I thought I wouldn't make it, days I barely had the strength to stand. Somehow in the middle of my weakness, I found myself inside your hands. You didn't promise life without the battles, but you promised you would stay with me. And that was more than all my understanding, more than I could see. So I stopped trying to be my own savior, stopped pretending I was strong alone, because the one who formed the stars above me had already made me his own. When I was falling apart, you held me together. Piece was never wasted space. Until then, I will keep trusting your presence, even when my heart is weak and worn. For the God who holds together the broken has already won. When I was falling apart, you held me together, and that truth will never fade away. For the Savior who sustains the shattered still holds me every day. When I was falling apart, you held me together, and now my heart can finally see that even in my deepest broken places, you were carrying me. You held me when I couldn't stand. You held me in your hands. The evening sky was fading into shadows, and so was all the strength I thought I had. I had spent another day pretending courage while carrying a heart that felt so sad. The road behind was scattered with exhaustion. The road ahead was hidden from my eyes, and somewhere between my fear and my surrender, I finally stopped trying to survive. I didn't bring a song of celebration. I didn't bring a faith that felt strong. I only brought my broken hallelujah, and somehow that was enough all along. When I had nothing left to give, God stayed. When my prayers were barely more than tears, when my hope was hanging by a thread of mercy, His faithful love drew near. When I had nothing left to give, God stayed, holding every shattered piece of me. And in the middle of my deepest weakness, His grace became my strength to breathe. I thought that heaven only welcomed victors, those who always knew the words to say. But Jesus met me in my worn out silence, and loved me exactly where I lay. He never asked me for perfection. He never measured all the things I'd done. He simply opened wide his arms of mercy and reminded me that I was still his own. The God who fills the oceans with their waters, the God who paints the stars above the sea, still takes the time to sit beside the weary and whisper words of peace to me. When I had nothing left to give, God stayed. When my prayers were barely more than tears, when my hope was hanging by a thread of mercy, his faithful love drew near. When I had nothing left to give, God stayed, holding every shattered piece of me. And in the middle of my deepest weakness, his grace became my strength to breathe. One day I'll see the reasons for the valleys. One day every question will be clear, and all the nights I thought that I was losing will reveal how you were always here. Until that day, I'll rest within the promise that your goodness never walks away. For the same God who carried me through yesterday will carry me through every day. When I had nothing left to give, God stayed. Not because my faith was always strong, but because his love is stronger than my weakness, and his mercy carries on. When I had nothing left to give, God stayed. And that's the story I will always tell, of a Savior who meets the broken-hearted and loves them far too well. When I was weak, God stayed. When I was weary, God stayed. And he always will. The room was quiet, but my heart was breaking, heavy with burdens I could barely explain. day for everybody around me, yet carried a river of hidden pain. The night arrived with all my unanswered questions, the kind that linger when the lights grow dim. And as I sat alone within the silence, I felt a gentle peace draw near again. No judgment in his eyes, no disappointment in his voice, only mercy reaching toward me, inviting my weary heart to rejoice. Jesus sat beside me until the tears stopped falling, until the inside my soul grew still. He never hurried my healing journey. He simply stayed and loved me through it all. Jesus sat beside me until the tears stopped falling, holding every broken dream and scar. And in the warmth of his compassion, I remembered how loved I truly are. I told him things I'd never told another, the fears I hid beneath a brave disguise, the disappointments, losses, and the heartache, the silent battles living in my mind. And though he already knew every detail, he listened as if hearing it anew, because the Savior of all creation still cares about the smallest things I do. The God who formed the endless heavens was sitting in my darkest night, turning every sorrow into something touched by his redeeming light. Jesus sat beside me until the tears stopped falling, until the ache inside my soul grew still. He never hurried my healing journey. He simply stayed and loved me through it all. Jesus sat beside me until the tears stopped falling, holding every broken dream and scar. And in the warmth of his compassion, I remembered how loved I truly are. One day there'll be no tears left to surrender, no lonely nights to struggle through alone. For every wound will find its healing before the everlasting throne. Until that day I'll keep remembering the comfort of that sacred place, where Jesus sat beside my weakness and covered it with grace. Jesus sat beside me until the tears stopped falling, and peace replaced the fear I used to know. The same faithful arms that held me then will never, ever let me go. Jesus sat beside me until the tears stopped falling, and now my heart can finally rest, because the Savior who stayed beside me has always known me best. He stayed beside me through every tear. He stayed beside me, and He is still here. The night had settled gently all around me, yet my heart was louder than the rain. I sat beneath the weight of silent struggles, trying to hide the ache and pain. There were thoughts I couldn't put in sentences. There were wounds too deep for me to explain. But somewhere in the middle of my weakness, your compassion called my name. You heard the tears before they became words. You knew the burden before I could speak. And in the quietness of your presence, your strength found the weakest part of me. The prayer I couldn't find the words to say, you understood it anyway. Every sigh, every tear, every broken piece was resting safely in your grace. The prayer I couldn't find the words to say rose to heaven through my pain. And the God who sees the deepest places wrapped my heart in peace again. I thought I had to bring you perfect language to somehow earn the comfort that I need. But your love was never waiting for perfection, only a willing heart to believe. You gathered every unspoken emotion every fear I carried through the years, and answered with a kindness far greater than anything I hoped to hear. You stayed when all my answers disappeared. You stayed when all my strength was gone, and through the darkness of uncertainty, your faithful love kept leading on. The prayer I couldn't find the words to say, you understood it anyway. Every sigh, every tear, every broken piece was resting safely in your grace. The prayer I couldn't find the words to say rose to heaven through my pain, and the God who sees the deepest places wrapped my heart in peace again. One day every question will be answered, every shadow swallowed by your light, and every whispered prayer from every lonely evening will become a song of endless life. Until then, I'll trust your loving wisdom, even when I cannot understand. For the God who holds the whole creation is holding me within His hands. The prayer I couldn't find the words to say became a testimony of your grace. For you were listening long before I spoke, and mercy met me in that place. The prayer I couldn't find the words to say was never hidden from your eyes, because the Father's heart has always heard me through every tear and every sigh. You heard me before I spoke. You loved me before I knew. The night had settled gently all around me, yet my heart was louder than the rain. I sat beneath the weight of silent struggles. There are days my heart feels scattered pieces, like it cannot find its way back home. I try to sing, but only broken echoes are all I seem to know. Still I lift the fragments of my weakness, every tear I never hid from you. And somehow in the middle of my brokenness, your mercy breaks through. You don't require perfect melody, you don't demand a flawless song. You just receive the honest offering of a heart that's barely strong. Even my broken heart can still worship you. Even my trembling voice is enough, for you are not moved by perfection. You are moved by love. Even my broken heart can still worship you, and in your presence I am made new, because the God who sees my weakness still calls me through. I used to think I had to hide my fractures, to stand before you without any shame. But you showed me that my